Welcome to The Lead, everyone. I'm Jake Tapper. All eyes are on Washington, D.C. for the inauguration of President-elect Donald Trump in 3 days, but we're going to begin today with the world lead because although there are new polls in this country suggesting Mr. Trump has some work to do if he wants to win the confidence of the nation he's about to lead, he received strong support today from Moscow. Standing in the Kremlin earlier today, President Vladimir Putin of Russia slammed outgoing President Obama and expressed backing for his successor. Not surprisingly, the January 6th briefing of Mr. Trump by the leaders of the intelligence community came up, and the heads up that Mr. Trump received about claims Russians have been making that they might possess compromising material about Mr. Trump, claims that the Trump team denies. CNN, in breaking this story 1 week ago today, made no descriptions of the specific allegations about Mr. Trump in these underlying memos, which were compiled by a former British intelligence official, though those memos were published elsewhere. CNN has never described the allegations because this material remains uncorroborated by us and, as of now, by U.S. intelligence officials. But while Mr. Putin today seemed to be offering something of a defense of Mr. Trump and maybe an excoriation of the charges, he apparently felt no such inhibitions. Russian President Vladimir Putin came to the defense of Donald Trump today. The subject was the U.S. intelligence community briefing Trump about the existence of memos of unsubstantiated claims regarding him, including allegations that Russians had compromising material about him.
Whether or not this is in the interest of the United States, this does a huge, huge harm.
Information that on Sunday, the White House Chief of Staff acknowledged he worries about. Are you at all concerned that the Russians have something on Donald Trump?
Look, the job description of Chief of Staff is to be concerned and to worry about things.
Putin today denied that the Russian government would ever compile such information.
What do you think? We have special security services running after every American billionaire? Of course not. It is complete nonsense. This is rubbish.
The former undercover KGB operative today mirrored Trump's own defense last week.
I read the information outside of that meeting. It's all fake news.
This is clearly false information.
It was a group of opponents that got together, sick people.
People who order false information and spread this information against the elected president, who fabricate it and use it in a political fight, they are worse than prostitutes.
While CNN has not reported on any of the unsubstantiated allegations in the memos, Putin today alluded to at least one of them.
It is hard to believe that he ran to a hotel to meet with our girls of a low social class, although they are the best in the world.
For his part, as a candidate and now president-elect, Mr. Trump has been critical of everyone from Meryl Streep to the cast of Hamilton, but has had very little critical to say about Vladimir Putin, whom U.S. intelligence agencies say was behind attempts to interfere with the U.S. election. Trump last week acknowledged that he thought Russia was behind the hacking and leaked information, but didn't really say anything bad about it.
If Putin likes Donald Trump, guess what, folks? That's called an asset, not a liability.
And while he gets backing from this former KGB operative, Trump is now involved in a high-stakes war of words with U.S. intelligence leaders, whom he blames for CNN's report last week, in which we revealed the existence of the memos and the briefing about the materials, though not any of its specifics.
I think it was disgraceful that the intelligence agencies allowed any information that turned out to be so false and fake out.
In a tweet, Trump even likened the actions of the intelligence community to what you might see in Nazi Germany, a comparison blasted by outgoing CIA Director John Brennan. Brennan has recently been publicly raising doubts about whether the president-elect understands how his seemingly impulsive tweets and remarks might impact national security.
Spontaneity is not something that protects national security interests, and so therefore when he speaks or when he reacts, he has to make sure he understands that the implications and impact in the United States could be profound.
Let's talk more about this with the former director of the CIA and the National Security Agency, General Michael Hayden. He's been a critic of the president-elect. General, thanks so much for being here. We appreciate it. So first, big picture. President-elect Trump being praised by the former top official of the KGB, and in a war of words with our own intelligence agencies, specifically the CIA. How did we get here?
So let's play on the American side first, Jake. Look, there's always tension between the intel guys and the policy guy. The guys over here are fact-based, he's vision-based. World as it is, world as we want it to be. Inherently inductive, inherently deductive, inherently pessimistic, inherently optimistic. So this happens all the time, and you go through it in every transition. This particular president-elect exhibits these characteristics over here, this confidence in his own kind of visionary intuition, far more than any other previous president. So I think we all knew in the intelligence community this was going to be hard. It's our great misfortune that the first time we come into contact with this dilemma, which we knew was going to come, it's on an issue that is used by others to actually question the legitimacy of his presidency. This is an absolutely perfect storm, and we've seen the results of it inside the American government.
Have you ever seen anything like what Vladimir Putin did today in terms of his defense of Donald Trump and his attack on both President Obama and the intelligence community here in this country?
No. We're off the map in terms of both our situation here, our circumstances, and what the Russians are doing. Now, look, I think Putin's a fairly smart guy, at least tactically. I think he understands his coming out and saying those kinds of things really are not viewed as a vote of confidence back here in the United States for the president-elect. I think it's just a continuation of his campaign to continue to poke and meddle and to mess with our heads in terms of the American political process.
And also what you heard Vladimir Putin say, going into detailed allegations, saying they weren't true, but then describing them.
Right.
I mean, that's fairly pernicious.
No, it is. And again, back to messing with our heads. Let's go back to the original covert influence campaign, which this certainly wasn't, probably the most successful in recorded history. It wasn't all that covert. I mean, the Russians actually got an added impulse to their efforts by having plausible deniability, but in essence allowing everyone to pretty much see who was pulling the strings.
Let's go back to that briefing where the intelligence chiefs told President-elect Trump about the existence of this information. They didn't provide the actual memos. They gave him a two-page synopsis of them. Some people, Donald Trump and also people around him, think that was a sneaky way to jam up President-elect Trump, that they were just trying to job him. They were trying to give we in the media an excuse to report on these uncorroborated allegations. What do you think?
So I think there are two severable decisions here, all right, on the part of the intel community. The first is to make sure the president-elect is aware of this. I think that's unavoidable. I think that's an absolute duty. It's, Jake, we know, if we know, a lot of other people know, you need to know, Mr. President-elect. So in terms of telling him this, I think that was just a given. That had to happen. How they told him is a separate decision. Maybe there were other ways of doing it that would have had a lower profile, that would not have triggered what you just suggested. But the fact they told him, I think, is a product of duty and nothing else.
What do you make of the fact that when I asked the White House Chief of Staff, are you worried that the Russians have something on Trump, he said his response was, "It's my job to be worried."
Yeah, look, Dennis has to be cautious. I mean, if
but it's a yes.
Well, actually, no, it's not a no.
Right. Okay.
All right? He can't say yes. But then again, a man in his position of responsibility can't issue the categorical "No, there's nothing to see here, folks. Move along," because he doesn't know that either.
Yeah. What do you make of the fact that you say that they had to tell him because this MI6 agent, this former MI6 agent, has long been considered a credible source of information. He has a network of information. I'm sure you know him, or at least know his work. But what does it say about the credibility of the information that they even mention it to him at all? I mean, they're saying it's not corroborated. We don't know it's true. James Clapper, the director of national intelligence, said a statement saying they'd made no judgment one way or the other. But that's not saying we think it's garbage.
Well, look, what you need to understand, and this brings you back a little bit into the tradecraft of the profession, all right? What that was, had we written it, we would have called it raw, unevaluated intelligence. And Jake, I did go to the site, and I did read those 30-plus pages. And it actually, in terms of having been written by a professional, yeah, that's the way these things are written. But that's why we call it uncorroborated. All right. So, I mean, it has some existence inside of our community, but it's really a great deal of distance away from any kind of conclusions. What we do normally then is to take that data and begin to compare it against other information we have. And one thing that's not visible on the website is, who are these guys? How much access do they have? Is it plausible that they would know this kind of information? Have they reported reliably in the past? That's all hidden from our view. One needs to begin to know those kinds of things before you begin to invest any kind of credibility into the raw, unevaluated reporting.
So we know that the FBI is looking into some of these allegations. I would imagine that other parts of the intelligence community are looking into other parts because their allegiance is to the United States, not
Right.
to a president. Is it possible for a president to come in and say, any of you looking into any of this stuff, stop. You have to stop. Can he do that?
I don't think he can do it with regard to the law enforcement aspect of it. I mean, if there's an investigation ongoing by the FBI, I do think that might have to continue. More broadly, though, Jake, the intelligence community responds to the priorities of the president. And now, frankly, I've got to admit, I'm making this up. It's my judgment as to how it would happen, because let me repeat, we're off the map. We have never been in these circumstances before.
Okay, I didn't find this interview reassuring at all. Thank you very much, General Michael Hayden. I appreciate it. Coming up, will Donald Trump's first 100 days be an uphill climb? The new poll numbers just days before he is sworn into office. Stay with us.